Welcome back, everyone, to The Deep Dive. This is episode 2 of season 3, The Schaeffer Dialogues.
Great to be back.
And we're digging deeper into Francis Schaeffer's book, He is There and He is Not Silent. Last time, we kind of set the table, introduced the book, looked at some core ideas.
Yeah, the groundwork.
Exactly. So today, we're taking that next step. The mission is really to explore Schaeffer's argument for why God's existence, and specifically his self-revelation in the Bible, is, well, philosophically necessary.
Necessary, not just, a nice idea.
Right. And we're going to focus on 3 key areas he highlights: metaphysics, morals, and epistemology. Okay, let's unpack this.
What's fascinating here is how Schaeffer pulls this out of dusty philosophy books and makes it about real life. These aren't just abstract puzzles.
No, definitely not.
They're the questions everyone asks,
Yeah.
About meaning, where we came from, how we know anything. And this deep dive really gets to the core of Schaeffer's point.
Mm-hmm.
You need a God who is there and not silent. A silent God just doesn't cut it philosophically.
That's a great way to put it. So to really get Schaeffer's argument, we need to properly define these 3 areas he talks about. Let's start with metaphysics.
Okay.
This is basically the problem of being. What actually exists? Schaeffer really pushes us to face what Jean-Paul Sartre called the basic philosophic question.
That something is there rather than nothing being there.
Exactly. I mean, just think about it. The universe, stars, us, anything existing in its current form, its complexity, it all falls under this huge question: why is there anything?
It's the ultimate why.
Totally. Okay, so that's metaphysics. Then Schaeffer moves to the second area, morals. He calls this the dilemma of man.
Mm-hmm. The dilemma.
Yeah, because man is personal, right? We have consciousness, creativity, value, but we're also finite, limited. And that means, Schaeffer says, we're not a sufficient integration point for ourselves. We can't find ultimate meaning just by looking inward.
It reminds me of that Sartre quote again.
The one about the finite point needing an infinite reference.
Exactly. No finite point has any meaning unless it has an infinite reference point.
Yeah.
It really captures that sense of needing something bigger.
It does. And this is tied to what Schaeffer calls man's mannishness, that quality that makes us distinctly human, not just animals or machines.
But then you have modern ideas trying to deny that.
Yes. Determinism, like B.F. Skinner's behaviorism or Francis Crick's chemical determinism, the idea that we're just complex chemical reactions.
Which clashes completely with how we actually experience ourselves.
Massively. Schaeffer points out, we have something like 40,000 years of observing ourselves as more than machines, and he highlights this great inconsistency.
Oh, like the Crick example.
Yeah. Crick wants to reduce everything to chemistry, but then he talks about nature as her, or capitalizes nature. Even the determinists can't live consistently like we're just robots. It's impossible.
Because deep down, we know there's more. That mannishness.
And this moral dilemma also includes that weird tension in humanity, our incredible capacity for nobility and art and sacrifice, alongside this, shocking cruelty, or just that modern feeling of alienation. It's all part of the moral problem.
That makes sense. Metaphysics, morals. What's the third?
The third is epistemology, which sounds complicated, but it's just the problem of knowing. How do we know anything? How can we be sure?
Okay, so existence, meaning, and knowledge, the big 3.
Pretty much, yeah.
And Schaeffer makes a couple of really critical observations about these areas. The first one is something Christians often forget, he says.
What's that?
That philosophy and religion, including Christianity, are actually dealing with the exact same basic questions.
Right. Not separate silos.
Not at all. We might use different words, theology versus philosophy, but whether you're talking about being or the human condition or how we know truth, everyone's wrestling with these same fundamental things. They just arrive at different answers.
That's a really important bridge to build.
It is. And his second observation is about the word philosophy itself. It has 2 meanings.
Okay.
There's philosophy as, like, the academic subject, the thing university professors do. Few people get deep into that.
Sure.
And then there's a second meaning, philosophy as a person's worldview, their basic map for understanding reality. And in that sense, Schaeffer says everyone is a philosopher.
From the professor
to the man digging a ditch, as he puts it. Everyone operates with a set of assumptions about what's real and true.
That's powerful. Everyone has a philosophy.
Yeah. And this leads to his critique, which is pretty sharp. He felt that evangelical Christians had often despised the concept of philosophy, maybe even looked down on the intellect.
And the danger there is.
The danger is we end up not even understanding the questions people are asking today. We might have answers, but if we don't get the questions driving modern thought, our answers won't connect. They won't seem relevant. You can't really help someone if you don't understand where they're coming from, right?
Makes total sense. You need to understand the question to give a meaningful answer. So if these are the big questions, what does Schaeffer say about the answers people give? Particularly for metaphysics, for existence.
Right. He transitions to the answers. And he says, basically, there are two broad classes of answers people have come up with throughout history for these fundamental questions.
Two main categories.
Yeah. The first class of answer essentially says there is no logical, rational answer. Everything is just chaotic, meaningless, absurd.
The line of despair, he calls it.
Exactly. You see this a lot in, like, existentialism, the theater of the absurd. It's very much a modern feeling, this sense that it's all just random noise. You hear it on the street, not just in philosophy.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though. Can anyone really live that way?
Yeah.
Consistently?
Schaeffer's answer is a hard no. You absolutely cannot live as though everything is truly chaotic and irrational. Why not? Because the world isn't chaotic. It has form, order, laws. If it were truly absurd, science would grind to a halt. You couldn't predict anything. You couldn't even, walk across the room reliably.
Yeah. You'd bump into suddenly appearing walls.
Right. He used that funny example from Godard's movie, Pierrot le Fou. The characters do absurd things, but they still go through windows, not solid walls. Even when trying to portray chaos, you implicitly rely on order.
So people are selective about their irrationality.
Horribly selective. People often retreat into it's all absurd when they're like losing a rational argument. But the moment you pick and choose when logic applies, the whole position falls apart.
If you were truly consistent, you couldn't even talk.
Precisely. It would just be blah, blah, blah. Communication itself relies on shared meaning and structure. The theater of the absurd ironically communicates its view that communication is impossible. It's a contradiction.
So, conclusion. This first class, the everything is absurd answer, isn't really a viable answer at all. It collapses.
It's intellectually unlivable. Yeah. Which brings us to the second class of answers. Those that can be rationally and logically considered.
Okay, the ones we can actually debate.
Exactly. And here's Schaeffer's big point. Despite all the variations throughout history, there are only three possible basic answers that are open to rational thought. Only three.
Wow, okay. What are they?
Answer number one. Everything came from nothing.
Define nothing.
He means absolute nothing. No energy, no mass, no motion, no personality. Like, imagine a blackboard that's never been used. You draw a circle, then you erase it perfectly.
Yeah.
Absolute emptiness.
Can anything come from that?
Schaeffer says it's unthinkable. No one has ever really sustained this argument because, well, how do you get everything, all this complexity, personality from literally nothing? It defies logic.
Okay, so that one's out pretty quickly. What's the second possible answer?
Answer number two. All that now is at an impersonal beginning.
Meaning it started with something non-personal.
Right. Started with just mass or energy or motion. Pick one. It doesn't really matter philosophically because they're all impersonal. Even starting with energy particles, like some modern science or even Salvador Dali did, doesn't change the fundamental issue. It's still impersonal stuff.
And if you start with impersonal stuff,
you're automatically led to reductionism. Everything, stars, planets, life, consciousness, love, morality, ultimately has to be explained only in terms of those original impersonal bits.
Reduced down to physics and chemistry.
Yep. Impersonal stuff plus time plus chance. Those are the only ingredients allowed in the recipe. No purpose, no design, no outside force, just atoms bumping around for long enough.
This raises an important question.
Go on.
If everything starts impersonally, how do particulars, individual things like a tree, a dog, a person, how do they get any real meaning or significance?
That's the killer question. And Schaeffer says nobody, East or West, has ever given a satisfactory answer to that. If you start with only the impersonal, how do you get genuine personality? How do you get meaning? How do you get consciousness?
It seems like a huge leap.
It is. No one's shown how impersonal plus time plus chance can logically produce the universe we see, especially human personality and our sense of ought.
Schaeffer had a term for this view, right? Not just pantheism.
Yeah, he preferred pan-everythingism.
Yeah.
He felt pantheism sometimes smuggles in a sense of personality that isn't really there in the impersonal starting point.
Okay.
But yeah, this idea that everything is ultimately one impersonal reality is ancient. You see it in Hinduism, Buddhism, lots of mysticism.
And even in some modern theology.
Oh, definitely. In modern liberal theology, that waters down the personal God. But the problems remain. It might give you a sense of unity, maybe, but it offers no meaning for diversity. Why are there distinct things if it's all ultimately one? Shouldn't it all just dissolve into a single cosmic Om?
Right, no room for individuality.
And crucially, no meaning for freedom. If it's all just determined impersonal processes, where's free will? And perhaps most importantly, no meaning for morals. If there's no personal lawgiver, no standard beyond the impersonal process, then right and wrong become just words, preferences, situational ethics.
So that's the dilemma of the second answer. Widely held, but deeply problematic.
Hugely problematic. It leaves us with personality emerging from impersonality, which is logically tough, and it struggles to ground meaning, freedom, and morals.
Which logically brings us to the third possible answer. To begin with, a personal beginning.
The very opposite. And this, Schaeffer argues, is where man, being personal, does have meaning.
This feels like it connects back to what you said earlier about people feeling lost, like a zero.
Absolutely. Schaeffer saw this constantly at Labrie. People needed these philosophical questions addressed before the simple gospel could even make sense to them. Because if you start impersonally, why would a personal being have any intrinsic value? You have to preach it so it's simple to the person to whom you are talking, addressing their actual questions.
And the personal beginning provides that foundation for value.
Yes. If the ultimate reality is personal, then our personality isn't some fluke, some accidental byproduct of complexity. It reflects the nature of reality itself. It has a source.
Like that analogy you mentioned, the Swiss valleys.
Right, the two valleys.
Yeah.
If the water in the second valley is higher than the first, it means the source isn't just the first valley. There must be a higher external source feeding it. Similarly, if you start with less than personality, just impersonal stuff, you can't logically end up with personality. You'd have to reduce personality down to mere complexity, which doesn't satisfy our experience or logic. You need a personal source to explain personal beings.
Okay, so a personal beginning makes sense, but then what kind of personal beginning?
Exactly. That's the next critical choice Schaeffer presents. God or gods. A single ultimate personal being or multiple limited ones.
And why aren't gods enough?
Because limited gods are not big enough. They can't be the ultimate reference point for everything. Think of Plato. He saw the need for absolute forms, absolute truth, beauty, goodness. But his gods, the Greek gods, were finite, squabbling, imperfect. They weren't big enough to ground those absolutes.
That explains the confusion in Greek myths.
Right. Who's really in charge? The gods or the fates? It's ambiguous because their gods weren't ultimate. A system with limited gods can't provide a sufficient anchor for reality, morals, or knowledge.
So what does a sufficient personal beginning require?
It requires, first, an infinite personal God. Infinite means he's unlimited, self-existent, the ultimate reality, the creator. He's big enough. Personal means he's not just an abstract force, but a conscious, relational being. He's the absolute other because his infinity separates him from creation.
Infinite and personal.
Both are crucial. But there's one more piece, Schaeffer argues, that's absolutely vital for a coherent answer.
Which is?
A personal unity and diversity within God himself. There needs to be both oneness and plurality at the very foundation of reality. And where do we find that?
Uniquely, Schaeffer says, in the Christian concept of the Trinity.
Ah, three persons, one God.
Precisely. He points to the Nicene Creed's use of the word person. That wasn't just a theological term. He says it catapulted the creed into modern relevance because it addressed this deep philosophical need.
How so?
Because if God is eternally Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, then communication and love didn't begin with creation. The persons of the Trinity communicated with each other and loved each other before all else was.
Meaning God didn't need to create us to experience relationship.
Exactly. He wasn't lonely. He didn't need the universe as a dialogue partner. Love and communication are intrinsic to his eternal nature. He doesn't need us in the way the universe absolutely needs him as its source and sustainer.
Wow, so the Trinity isn't just like a weird math problem?
Not at all. It's the answer, Schaeffer argues, to the fundamental philosophical problem of unity and diversity, specifically personal unity and diversity. It wasn't cooked up to solve the philosophical dilemma. The revelation was already there, and it perfectly met the need. So when people feel, I don't know, intellectually embarrassed by the Trinity,
Schaeffer would say, reframe it. See it as the solution to a universal problem that no other worldview, no other philosophy has ever adequately solved. How do you get ultimate unity and meaningful diversity, especially personal diversity? Only the Trinity provides that.
And this solves more than just the existence problem.
Yes, it grounds everything. Metaphysics.
Yeah.
You have an infinite personal source. Morals. You have a basis for personality, value, relationship, and objective, right and wrong, in the character of this guy. Epistemology. You have a God who communicates, who isn't silent, making knowledge possible. It even resolves that tension of being finite yet personal. Because on the side of God's infinity, yeah, we're vastly separated, like an atom to him. But on the side of his personality, because we're made in his image, we are fundamentally different from animals, plants, machines. We share in personhood. That solves the dilemma. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this infinite, personal, triune God isn't just, the best explanation for existence. Schaeffer's arguing it's the only answer that holds together logically and matches our experience.
That's a bold claim. So let me try and summarize. Schaeffer's basically saying, look, when you really analyze the fundamental questions of existence, meaning morality, knowledge, there's no other sufficient philosophical answer except the one found in the Judeo-Christian understanding of God.
That's the core of it.
And the content matters. Just saying God is vague. Yeah. It's the specific content, infinite, personal, and triune, that actually meets the philosophical requirement.
Exactly. The content fills the need.
He even says, quite personally, that he would still be an agnostic if there was no Trinity. Because without that specific concept, that high order of personal unity and diversity, he felt there just were no answers.
Which underlines how crucial this is. It's not an optional add-on. It's foundational. And it loops back to his earlier point. Philosophy and religion are asking the same questions. And on this most basic level, existence itself, he concludes, it is the Christian answer or nothing.
Wow.
And this gives Christians, he argues, a profound intellectual confidence. Our truth isn't just true to the dogmas or true to the Bible, though he affirmed biblical authority completely, but it's true to what is there. It matches reality.
So you can follow the arguments all the way through.
You can carry out intellectual discussion to the end of the discussion because the Christian worldview corresponds to reality in a way others don't. But, and this is crucial, you need the full biblical answer.
Not a watered-down version.
Right. Not a Christianity that tries to blend with the pan-everythingism of the East or gets reduced to the kind of modern liberal theology that ultimately loses the personal God. You need the robust, historic, biblical position to get these great titanic answers.
Which all hinges on that core statement.
He is there, and he is not silent. We have answers because the infinite, personal, triune God isn't some distant abstraction. He exists, and he has spoken. He's revealed himself.
Whole thing creation.
General revelation, yeah. And in the Bible, special revelation. They speak with one voice on these foundational points. Man can identify the problems, metaphysics, morals, epistemology, but we can't generate the ultimate answers from ourselves. The answer comes because God is there and is not silent.
What an incredible framework. We've gone from the basic questions of existence through the dilemmas of being human and knowing anything to see how Schaeffer argues they all point towards the necessity of this very specific understanding of God, infinite, personal, triune, and revealed.
It's a comprehensive case.
So what does this all mean for you, listening right now, as you grapple with these same big questions? Maybe consider what Schaeffer suggested about that revolution. What if Christians really grasped that their faith isn't just subjectively true or true to its own rules, but objectively true to what is there? What could that mean for your own confidence, your intellectual integrity, your conversations with others, if you really took hold of the idea that Christianity offers the only truly sufficient answers to these deepest human questions?
It's definitely something to ponder. And if you want to explore these ideas further, we really encourage you to engage in a deeper dialogue with Joseph R. Miller over his website, morethancake.org. There are great resources there.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time as we continue our exploration of the Schaeffer dialogues.